Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Metal Mill 52 workshop. Thought I'd show a couple of things. About ready to declare victory on the drill head itself. I got everything reassembled last night and I'm really happy with the way it seems to work. Obviously the truth test will be when I have a motor hooked up, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But a couple things to point out. The fasteners, as I mentioned before, I'm using little 256 brass hex head screws that I bought at a hobby shop, and I made a little tool. I had been using this, it's a 1024 socket head screw, and holding it in some vice grips for my fingers, depending on how much grip I needed. And so I made a little tool. I had a piece of a 1/4 inch hex steel, and I just drilled it and tapped it for 1024, and then I put the screw inside with a little drop of green Loctite, which is a sleeve retainer. It's fantastic stuff. This is not going anywhere. And also, while I had the stuff out, I went ahead and blued this because it'll be useful as a tool. It'll be getting a lot of hands-on time. And I wanted to talk about that bluing process because I use that on several things on the pillar tool, and it's pretty useful, pretty handy. Let me show you a couple of things. That if you can see this here, what I'm doing is taking out, I made the depth stop, the fine adjustment depth stop, just like they describe in the book. And I also blued these screws that are part of the depth stop. Let me take one out and I'll show you how that looks as well. Here we go. So these are just made out of cold rolled steel. It's 9/16 inch cold rolled steel that I turned down and I threaded it. This is 3/16 40, which is a model engineer thread. I used a die, the tailstock die holder on that, and turned it in the lathe. I made sure I got a good finish. I used some sandpaper afterwards. I knurled it for easy, grip with your fingers there. And the bluing process is really quite simple. I use this stuff called Birchwood Casey Gun Oil. The first thing you do is to completely degrease the steel, get everything off it. I use acetone for that, and just wipe it off really well. And then you just treat it with the blue. I use these forceps so you don't want to get the stuff on your fingers, so I'll take a swab and then use these little surgical forceps that I got off of eBay for a couple of dollars. I'll hold a swab, put it on the steel for about 30 seconds, and then once I'm done, I'll put the swab, show you. I have some little pill bottles here, so the swab, I can reuse it. It's in this one called, I just labeled gun blue on the top. And then you need to rinse it off, so I'll have a separate swab or just a thing of water. So this is water that has been used to rinse the gun blue. And with the smaller parts like the screw, you can just dunk it in there. I put all 3 of the little screws in there in the water, let them sit for a while, clean it off, and take it out, dry it off, and you're good to go. The next step is to use this. This is what Birchwood Casey this is their brand of gun oil, and they call for this as a way to kind of seal the metal after you've blued it. So I use the Birchwood Casey Gun Oil, and I squirted some in here, and I've got a swab in there too. Again, another old pill bottle that I put the label gun oil on top. So you get to treat all those things with the gun oil and let it dry. I basically let them air out and dry for a day, and after that, then what I've found is really useful, and you can see the really nice finish that I have on the ball handles on the pillar tool. What that is ordinary turtle wax. So I'll wax them after the parts have been oiled. I'll dry them off, let them just air dry for a day, and then I'll take some turtle wax and rub it on just like you're waxing your car. And it's a creamy, pasty wax, so I'll rub that on let that haze over just like you would a car, and buff it, and it has a nice little kind of a dull shine, but so you've got a good protective finish on otherwise unprotected steel parts. So I'll save this in my little tool kit. That'll be very handy. I'll have a dedicated box for the pillar tool, and this is a nice custom made tool that I can use for that. So the next step that I'm not worrying about, but planning ahead, kind of really torn here, and I'd love to hear more feedback and input from everybody, because just this morning, I looked at it last night, and this morning I thought, I'll probably go ahead and make the little jockey block and jockey pulleys on the back, because it was actually kind of fun making the drive pulley for the spindle here. And then you can mount a motor down on a table and have a tubular drive belt come up over the jockey pulleys and drive the spindle. But in the back of my mind, when I was originally conceiving the project, I had something in mind, like a neat little motor that would kind of hang on the back here. You definitely want it pretty small to not be in the way, and that's a good reason to use the jockey pulleys. Somebody suggested, and thank you very much, because I hadn't even heard about these, but the little servo motors that people are using now, it's a 550 or 600 watt servo motor, and that, looking at YouTube videos, they seem pretty small. So that might be a thought, either just getting one and having it down here and using the jockey pulleys, or conceivably mounting the motor on the back. Here's a small motor that I got at a yard sale. It doesn't work. I need to rewire it for sure, and maybe needs new brushes and things, but this is kind of the thing I had in mind. It's a little Dayton motor. Looks like a sewing machine motor or something from an old-fashioned small appliance. The wires are terrible, so I really don't know if it works or not, but you could have a little bracket on the back, have a little motor, and directly mount it here, and that would be ideal. Something that size is awfully small and very convenient. It wouldn't, and be easy to take off and stick in a drawer somewhere when you weren't using the drill head. So that is one thought I had. The other thoughts, I do have a Shoreline Lathe, and if you're familiar with Shoreline, it's a really neat tool system, because you can have a mill column. You can take the head off, the motor, power control, and all that off, and put that, actually with the headstock, you don't even have to take this apart. You can put it on a mill column and convert your little lathe to a milling machine. So really nice thing to have for small work, and they're powerful. This is a 90 volt DC motor, so they are pretty powerful, and probably more than enough for what I would need here. But let's see, I thought I had it plugged in. Let me turn the power on here, because I want to demonstrate both these motors. The one thing, I would have to take that apart. Excuse me a second. There we go. I would have to take it apart, and either that or buy a whole separate one, which I'm not willing to do because they are expensive. But I'd have to take it apart and then almost set it up as a dedicated thing. But the size, again, would be pretty nice. Let me kind of hold it there, you can get that idea. Either a bracket down below like this, or if I can reverse the rotation on something, I could mount it up like that. That would be fairly ideal as well, and that size would also be pretty decent. So kind of that's one of the ideas I had in mind. But like I said, there's a used motor on eBay right now. They want $100 or best offer, which is way too much in my opinion, because you still need some kind of a power supply. It's a DC motor, you're using AC current, you'd still need some kind of a power converter, and that's another expense. So I will turn this on, and what in the world, I thought I had this thing plugged in. So much for my plans. I guess I did not. Oh, I see. I had it plugged in, but it's fairly quiet, which is a nice thing. I don't know if you can even hear that. But it would be expensive to be expensive to run that, to buy one rather. So that's a thought, is something like a Shoreline. I'm not sure. I mean, if I got a really good deal on one, maybe, but we'll have to see about that. The size is good. Having the built-in power supply is great, but again, the expense of that, and then because of the nature of the design, I would probably have to fabricate a custom thing that would be dedicated for the pillar tool, and I'm not quite sure I want to do that. The other idea I had is my buddy Alan used to work in a medical practice, and they use these portable power units, if you can see that. Let me pull that to the front a little bit. It's kind of like a dental arts type of thing almost. It's a heavy duty grinder, sort of a professional version of a Dremel tool. This thing is loud, but it's powerful and it's high RPM. I honestly don't know what the RPM is. It doesn't really say on here. I'd have to look it up, but I think this motor needs new brushes. They kind of threw it out, I think, at the medical practice because the end of it was chipped, and it sounds like it needs new brushes. But let me turn it on. You can get an idea about this thing. Very loud and screechy. I'm going to turn that off because that would take a lot of the fun out of using the tool if it was something that loud. But high RPM, and I think there's some good power in there. And again, the size of this would be okay. So, I could fab up a mounting bracket. The size would be good. But I also wanted to show, while I'm talking about size, I think that those servo motors are about this size. So if they are, that would be attractive. I mean, I could build a little bracket there, and the thing could piggyback on the back of the pillar tool, no problem. So we'll have to see about that. The other attractive thing about the servo motors is they're on eBay for about $100, and that includes the motor, the speed control assembly, power converter, all that stuff. So just some thoughts about the pillar tool. I would love to hear your thoughts and suggestions. Again, thanks for all the feedback. Welcome to the new subscribers. And we will keep you posted as we get closer to making a decision. I might play around with some options here. I could mock up some brackets because they're all usable ideas. But one of the key is you want probably a high RPM for the tiny little drill bits that I'd be using in this thing. Small, and we really wouldn't need a lot of horsepower. Variable speed, probably not that huge of a deal, but it would be nice. And that, I don't think I have that with the Fordham. I do have a pedal assembly that goes with that, thanks to Alan. So who knows? Let me know what you think. I sure appreciate it. And thanks again for watching, and I will keep you posted.